Oh,
No,
hang
go
on.
back. Okay, here we go. Well, right. Good evening, everybody. My name's Bob Sewell. I'm the president of the Houston Archaeological Society, and welcome to our September monthly meeting. Our speaker this evening is Dr. Chris Lintz, who we're welcoming back after his successful February meeting to continue his discussion, which will be part two of his 55 years of research studying the late prehistoric Antelope Creek phase people in the Texas-Oklahoma panhandles, including domestic architecture and settlement patterns, Alabate's flint trade and quarrying activities, and the collapse and demise of the culture in the mid-late 1400s. Dr. Lintz received his master's and PhD in anthropology from the University of Oklahoma and his BA in anthropology from Arizona State. He has conducted and directed cultural resource management archaeology in 17 states and Puerto Rico, worked for various universities and private consulting firms. In 2006, he became the first full-time cultural resource specialist for the Wildlife Division of the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department, where he managed cultural resources on some 51 wildlife management areas across 1,200 square miles of Texas, and coordinated cultural resource consultation for federal grants addressing habitat restoration projects on private lands. He retired from the state agency in 2016 and currently serves as a research associate for the Center for Archaeological Studies at Texas State University in San Marcos. Since 1970, Chris has focused on his geographical research interests on the southern high plains, including, but not completely, emphasis on ecological anthropology involving paleo-environmental construction and other activities. He has published more than 370 reports, articles, and book chapters on a wide range of projects and research topics. He has served as an officer or member of advisory and steering committees for the Plains Anthropological Society, the Texas Archaeological Society, the Oklahoma Anthropological Society, and the Texas Historical Commission. He's a steward of the THC Commission, and several of his projects have been recognized with merit in archaeology awards by the THC. Honors include the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Panhandle Archaeological Society, the Lifetime Membership Award of the Hill Country Archaeological Society, recognition as a Fellow by the Texas Archaeological Society, and the Distinguished Service Award from the Plains Anthropological Society. So I think we can say he knows his stuff. Okay. Please welcome Dr. Chris Lintz. Over to you, Chris.
Thank you very much. I can't believe I did all that. Thank you all for having me back. It's been 7 months since I gave the first half of the talk, and wasn't sure if I were getting new people attending or if people had forgotten what was going on. So I'm going to start and overlap a little bit about what I said last time and really focus on the Alabate's flint and the exchange and the demise of the culture. But there's going to be some duplication of earlier conversations, and just to refresh your memory of what exactly I'm dealing with. So with that, let's get started. The Antelope Creek area is the yellow area on this map. The dark solid line is the distribution of north of that is the area of the furthest south western extent of Cord-Mark pottery that extends all the way in through the Ohio Valley, New York, Canada, and into Russia. So I'm at the very edge of the distribution of Cord-Mark pottery. It is the cord marking of the pottery that really denotes that we are not dealing with the Puebloan cultures of the Southwest. And tonight I'm going to talk about a little bit about well, let me back up. The orange area in Colorado, New Mexico, Antelope Creek in yellow, and the dark green in northeast Texas are plains cultures that have quartermark pottery, but they also build houses with stone masonry. And and that differentiate them from virtually every place else in Oklahoma and Kansas and going north into Canada. So I'm going to be talking primarily about Antelope Creek. The dark green one is the Buried City Complex, and they're going to be very important. But then the ones that are also of importance are the three right below the dark blue area in southern Kansas. Those are the Pratt, Wilmore, and Bluff Creek complexes. And that's going to be the topic of most of the latter half of this talk tonight, just to get you oriented. We're talking about late prehistoric time period, which is from about AD 1200 to 1450, 1500. So just to reiterate, we do have a generic paleo-environmental reconstruction that has been reproduced many times with during the Archaic, the two drought interval, and then the late prehistoric people, which I call ceramic. Early ceramic is Paladuro and Lake Creek cultures. Middle ceramic from 12 to 1500 includes the Antelope Creek culture, the Buried City Complex, and the ones I mentioned in Kansas. And then there's a late ceramic complex, which is Tierra Blanca and Garza complexes. And then we get into historic equestrian complex, Native American people, and finally we get historic people. I'm really going to talk primarily about the middle ceramic complexes, and the last will kind of spill into the late prehistoric complexes, although that's not the main focus of today's talk. As I mentioned last time, we get a bit of resolution of interpolation of tree ring dates from all over North America, and the lower left box indicates about 100 square mile area with the dot focusing in the red dot focusing on the Canadian River Valley, where the Crossbar Ranch is, which was the field school excavations for Texas State. All the little green squares are areas that have contributed tree ring data. And as I indicated before, we interpolate to the corner points of the big square first, and then those that are closest to a tree ring collection point is given a heavier weight than the ones that are further away. Once we have the data for the four corner points, we select the Buried City Complex, the red dot, and come up with a reinterpolation based on the four corners to derive a site-specific indication of the yearly rainfall for the area. The graph on the right shows the Antelope Creek span is from 12 to 1450 or so. And what is being measured is, because we're using tree ring data, we're looking at the June growth rings of the trees that are put in the area. The red ones to the left represent standard deviations of drought conditions, with the third standard deviation are the ones that are circled in bright red. And the ones on the right are those periods that are green. And again, we don't have really much showing up in the intensity. It's more drought than moisture out here. And we're going to visit this graphic again when we talk about the collapse of the culture. But what's important here is that during the first half of the Antelope Creek phase from 12 to 1300, 1150 to 12 to 1300, we have intense periods of drought conditions with at least the one that ran just before 1300, of extending into the third standard deviation. That means 95% of the time is excessive drought. After 1300, the latter half of Antelope Creek has a large span of mostly moisture events going on there. But the demise of the culture from about 1450 up to nearly 1500, we have a 37-year long drought that does go to the third standard deviation, a very intense drought. And I'd like to remind you that that's 7 times longer in duration than the Dust Bowl that some of our forefathers dealt with in the 1930s in the high plains. So tremendous collapse of the Antelope Creek happened is largely based on the climatic information. Again, going back, the distinctive characteristics of the cultures that I mentioned, the Pishopaw houses are totally different, and they do not have the the tool assemblage of the horticulturalists. But Buried City and Antelope Creek and most of the other cultures that are in Kansas are agriculturalists. They've got scapula hoes, tibia digging sticks, and all kinds of other implements that are occurring there. So these stone structures are classic Antelope Creek that are vertical stone slabs and foundations. And as you can see from the picture on the right, that is actually an intact doorway. They had the roof and everything to it. So that's, people had to crawl into the room, down the vestibule, into the central part. The distinctive part about Antelope Creek, again, as a reminder, is that these houses have a center depressed floor channel, which is anywhere from mostly 8 to 12 inches, about a foot deep, that take out a third of the center part of the structure, in which the 4 center roof support posts, the dark black dots along the edges of the channel, would be where the frame of the center posts are. That's around the center hearth. And the amazing thing about this, but I'm surprised a lot of the people didn't develop it, is that all the cooking and all the preparation and all the really messy kind of activities inside the house occur in the center channel, and the depressed channel really confines all that ash and garbage that can be easily swept up and cleared out. The benches, the so-called benches on the north and south side, are most likely higher elevated sleeping areas where probably robes and other stuff are. That's where we find basketry and so forth. Things like the bins that I've got indicated here have only been found at one single site. The internal slab line cyst that's in the bench is a rare occurrence, but a surprising number of these structures have raised platforms on the west wall, mostly inside the house, but occasionally they project through the west wall. There's a kickback in that. For those of you that might have been involved in the I don't even remember the date, but the TAS Field School digging at Blue Creek Shelter, written up and published in the bulletins by Jim Kazort. The recessed altar in one of the houses that they dug there is called the window in that document. It's not a window, it's part of the recessed platform that occurs there. But these are very typical. Now, above the vertical stone slabs that line the walls, we get massive amounts of adobe and horizontal layers of slabs separating the adobe. So you see in the wall to the left of the entryway, the doorway, 2 layers of horizontal slabs separated by adobe walls. This is a very classic upper wall configuration of Antelope Creek. That is the house I just described is the typical residential unit, and it's common in many places. Most of them are single room structures, single family unit, but at Elevate's Ruin 28 and the one we've got pictured here, Antelope Creek 22, Antelope Creek 22 has 7 residential units that are all contiguous to each other with small storage areas that flank the extended entryways, and occasionally you'll get other rooms that attach in front of it. So this is essentially the characterization of the types of rooms and how they're configured. We also have some sites that have only circular structures. The Pickett, Roper, Connor, and Chicken Creek are 4 of these things. They're not real common structures, and very few of these have been written up to date. I want to throw this in also. We talked about this last time, but we also have some structures in which no slabs occur, no in the wall slabs, but we have our post holes that are sunk in the wall, plastered over. This is the Jack Allen site with 48 perimeter posts. They're set at 15-degree angles, sloping towards the front. And instead of a real defined depressed center floor channel, they've actually built a little clay rill that in place of the center channel. You can see we've in the doorway, detailed the doorway. The entryway has got a saddle shaped entryway and then an entry step before you step down into the grime that's confined to the center channel on these structures. So again, of all the cultures, Antelope Creek, Buried City, and the Zims complex, the only 3 that have the center floor channel feature in all the plains areas. So artifacts, again, mostly, many of them are allobates, but you see double-bedded axes and hoes. Projectile points are side notched. It's basely notched points, sometimes unnotched triangular point forms. High incidence of end scrapers, diamond bevel knives, and the pottery is traditionally cord marked, as I indicated. So this gives you some idea of both vessels with contracting lip or rim forms, as well expanding limb forms to these vessel forms. Okay, moving into the occurrence of this, we're in the center of the Texas Panhandle. The black dot in the map of Texas shows you the 2 counties involved in. The green area is the modern surface distribution of the Allobates dolomite formation, and the black lines, concentric black lines down the middle, represent areas that have higher incidences of chertification, where the dolomite has been transformed over to flint. And the flint, you can see, is banded. It's very colorful. So a lot of it is badly fractured, as the big boulder shows. The only 2 areas that have 100% chertification in substantial areas are the 2 center dots on Antelope Creek on both sides of the Canadian River that you have here. The other ones have lesser amounts of chertification, sometimes not more than 5 or 10%. And in the dolomite rocks elsewhere in the Allobates formation, you're apt to find things that are called beads of chert. And that's about the size of it. It's, a pony bead would be about all the chert you get there, and you can't harvest that for making stone tools. So it's really just 2 areas that produce these on each side of the Canadian River. This is an elaboration of the areas, and the purple circles are essentially areas that where we have the high instances of chert and excavated quarries. The one on the lower right is Allobates National Monument, where the 729 flint quarries have been found. That's the one you can visit. The one on the north side, opposite it, involve quarrying deposits and chert outcrops, sometimes as big as a coal mining dump truck, single pieces, couple meters long, couple meters wide, and a couple meters thick, that occur in that area. We don't know a lot about that area. It's called the Plum Creek region, In the Plum Creek area, we don't know, we have not found substantial villages up there because it's only been in the last few years that land ownership has changed hands and we now have access to get into it. I do want to highlight the three orange circles we have depicted here. These are areas where we have good quality Alabates flint on the west side of the Canadian River. Good quality flint, but there's no evidence of quarrying activity. There's no pits that occur there. We have extensive workshop deposits and acres of flint napping occurring in that area, but not excavation. The value of the quarry pits is that you get moist flint, which preserves and flint naps a whole lot better than the flint that is dried out, exposed to sunlight. Here are some quarry pits. Again, this is redundant from last time, but it shows you the quarry pits from Alabates National Monument. Sometimes we get clear depressions, particularly in the winter. You see them in the summertime. What you typically see is a ring of flint debris that occurs in great abundance outside the pits. The three people in the center are standing inside of modern fill that has come into the pits. And so there's lower quantities of dirt visible on the surface, but that's where the pit surfaces are. And the pits can vary up to, as you can see, a couple meters in diameter. So far, there's only been one pit that's been excavated. This is one that Paul and Susanna Cates excavated a few years ago. And this is an interesting feature. It has not yet been published, unfortunately. I think there's a report in progress. But what we have here is a large circular area. The pit has been cut in half. So half of this profile that you see on the left side is profile. Well, the one on the right is the excavated pit. And what this pit shows, interestingly enough, is that there was a staircase of at least 3 white steps, white outline steps that get you down into the pit. So the flint that is depicted here is the dark gray chert marked by blue is being quarried, and nodules are being passed out up the staircase to people on the surface. When you look at the profile, what you see is a lot of rubble that has slipped back into the pit, and then the top of the pit has got virtually nothing in it. That's wind-blown deposits, probably from dust bowl deposits that happened during the 30s. But this is, I think this is the first time we've seen the entry steps going down into a quarry pit. Didn't expect that, but it's kind of fun to see. So this is half of the quarry pit exposed. Here's Alabates National Monument area. The quarry pits, 729 of them are around this tributary, unnamed tributary, and it occurs on all kinds of ridges that come out, usually at the very top of the hill, some going down the ridges. So basically, this is where all the quarrying was done. You can see there's discrete areas. Not exactly sure how people figured out where to dig, whether these were privately owned by families or clans or something like that yet. But this is where things are. The important thing is that all this stuff is real easy to take from the quarry pits, and about a mile away is Alabates Ruin 28 on top of the ridge. You can follow the creek down, walk up the hill, and you're at Alabates 28. This was one of the major excavated sites by the Works Progress Administration, where the 2 major areas were excavated. Looking at the WPA map, there were 4 separate areas comprised, mostly excavated in 10 by 10 foot squares. And we have a contiguous room structure in Unit 1 in the north area. There's a 150-foot space between the north area, Unit 1 and Unit 2, with no excavations occurring. And then in Unit 2, by and large, we have isolated single-family units with exception of one or two clusters. And you can see we've got one or two contiguous room structures here in this area too. Circumstantially, we only have very few dates from this area, but I think that excavation unit 2 is more recent in time than area 1. Area 1, with a contiguous room structure, was converted from a contiguous room building into a mound, which I'll show you here, I think. This is the mound structure of Elevates Ruin 28 Unit 1. And the walls, when the WPA started digging them, measure 72 inches tall, still intact. And you can see this is the gentleman on the right is Ely Baker, who is the field director, and the gentleman on the left is Floyd Studer, and he was a banker and insurance man, and he worked was the director of archaeology at the Panhandle Plains Historical Museum from 1931 to 51 when he was replaced by Jack Hughes. What's interesting about this picture with the two gentlemen in it is that you see we don't have any evidence of the vertical slabs in the walls of this structure, but you do see two layers of stone masonry separated by areas of massive adobe. And there's also a quote window above Floyd Studer's head. Earlier people that got into digging the site, and then some politics I'm not going to go into here, but there were a number of people that wanted to visit the Elevates quarry, and Studer required anyone that wanted to visit the quarry back in the 1930s. After Folsom was found, the projectile points from the Folsom kill were identified as coming from Elevates, and a lot of museum people wanted their own points. They came out here and had to go through Studer to get to the site, and he required those people to dig on his favorite site, which was this one, and dig in the mound. And what we see here is in room 19, the lower picture shows the earlier excavations outlined in purple, and what they found was a remnant of a adobe wall structure that, according to the field notes, it's a superimposed wall located 4 feet above the floor of the main room. So this means that there was a house built on top of this artificially constructed mound. We don't know exactly much about this yet, in part because detailed studies of this thousands upon thousands of artifacts have never really come out in detail, but we suspect that we have someone controlling access to it, the area, possibly assigning people to quarry pits or families, and possibly involved in dictating the trade in directions of where the flint may be going. These are the common tools that you see in the toolkits that are being traded. A lot of it happens as caches of chipstone material. Again, you can see axes. Quarry blanks are by far and away the dominant one. I think there's almost 500 of those things at Elevates Ruin at the Panhandle Plains Historical Museum for analysis, but we also see bifaces, hay knives, end scrapers, tool kits, tool chests, and things like that that are showing up here. So these are the materials that are shaped at Elevates Ruin 28 and a number of other ones. Quarries are manufactured and then they're shipped off. Going back to Elevates Ruin 28, this is a cache of trade blanks. There was 416 blanks, I'm sorry, not 500, but 416. The numbers that you see in the 10 by 10 foot squares on both excavation areas represent the number of bifaces that are found. And what I've done is I've circled a few of the ones, like in Elevates 28 Unit 1. There's one with 25 trade blanks in one 10 by 10 foot square just to the lower right of the contiguous room structure. And at the very top there, of that, there's a 15 more showing up there. The interesting thing is that there are very few 40 blanks found in the residential rooms, the 4 residential rooms. A few of them do occur in the small rooms that flank the entryways, but it really looks, if you look at the patterning, that consider that the contiguous room structure was converted into a mound structure with a house on top. These would have been trade blanks that are scattered around the basal edge of the mound itself of that structure. Now we get to the more recent one in area unit 2. You can see we have very few concentrations. There's 19 up in the area 5, and we have 46 and 20 more down in area 8 in the lower part. But by and large, not as much trading is going on there, or at least direction of trading. May well be that the flint is being amassed around whoever is living on top of the house. These people are probably contributing to the whole area. So we look at the distribution of caches that are found and reported in the Panhandle. I've got a database of a couple hundred caches from Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas. And these are the ones that are contain Alabates flint. The red represent caches that have 100% Alabate tools in it. The blue, mostly Alabates, and the purple, there are very few Alabates with mostly with other stuff. And the ones right around the quarries in Potter County and Hutchinson County, you can see where there's a tremendous amount of material occurring in this area. The thing that you have to be concerned about when you start plotting up the distribution of caches is that the Canadian River cross cuts the Texas Panhandle, and it continues flowing down the center part of Oklahoma, and in far eastern Oklahoma meets up with the Arkansas River. And so during the melting of the glaciers, during the erosion of the Canadian River Valley, carried boulders of chert nodules downstream and deposited them on high terraces due east of the river. So when we look at that that circular area with high instances of caches in that area, it may well be that we've got the Washita River or other folks that are making local caches out of the outwashed gravels of material. But what's really clear is that the caches to the southwest and the northeast cross-cut the river systems, and they have to be human transported by hand or perhaps by dog into those areas. So Antelope Creek being a plains village of Middle Ceramic period, it's pretty obvious to spot non-local material. And for the southwestern goods that show up here, there's actually 5 items. I only got 4 pictured here. Turquoise occurs in Antelope Creek sites. Painted pottery occur. Shell jewelry with the Saconas tinkler shell and Olivella shell beads showing up here. A tremendous amount of obsidian coming from the Jemez Mountains area. The 5th item that shows up there is coal, nodules of coal. And it's quite possible that some of that coal might be coming as far away as the Hopi Mesas in Arizona. We do get occasional sherds from the Hopi Mesas in Antelope Creek sites in the Texas Panhandle. But by and large, a lot of the material seems to be filtering through Pecos River and coming down into the Canadian River Valley area. If you go back and look at the map, what I've done is I've tabulated, I guess I need to back up. Let me just say that Southwest archaeologists do not like to dig on the high plains. And we have extremely few projects with detailed descriptions or massive excavations in Northeast New Mexico. but we do have projects. And so what I've done is I've tabulated the amount of alabates occurring on some of these projects, the big ones. And you can see the vast majority is that we have less than 1% alabate showing up. Ute Dam Reservoir has reported the most, but Larry Hammock records Tacovas Flint, Alabates Flint, and even Edwards Plateau Cherts all together as plains material. So that 8% is not strictly alabates. In other words, alabates is occurring, but it is in low occurrences. Everyone in Antelope Creek, there's probably 30 publications on plains southwestern trade, and it's based on the exotic artifacts of southwestern materials found mostly in the Antelope Creek sites that gets everyone excited. If we go a little further and look what goes on in other directions, again, let's ignore the blue Canadian River because that has the boulders that wash downstream in it. And here we've got a number of other sites that have been excavated in southern Kansas, the Oklahoma Panhandle, western Oklahoma proper, and of course down here in the Texas Panhandle. And so the yellow-orange denotes areas, sites with more than 50% alabates flint in usage. I'll talk about, okay, the stamp, I'm going to talk about the Stamper site briefly. I want to point out the Stamper site is in the middle of the Oklahoma Panhandle where 90% of the flint is alabates up there. There's no outcrops of alabates up there. It's all hand transported in that area. So, but notice that we've got this long extension of alabates extending into southern Kansas. So we're going to go back and talk about this again. So we're going to talk about this is the dark green is the buried city complex. The kind of purple, the gray and dark gray are the Pratt, Wilmore, and Bluff Creek complexes that where a lot of this goes, and then the light green is the buried city complex. I'm sorry, that's the Odessa Yate complex. The dark green is the buried city area. This is just to get you oriented as to what I'll be talking about. The blue area represents Little River complex with their own culture complexes. Most of these people are groups that do become the Wichita Indians, and we'll talk about those people in a little bit too. So throw this picture here to characterize the difference between the Southwest Antelope Creek pottery versus some of the pottery that we see in the central plains and in the Kansas area. And the thing that's important is that at Alabates Ruin 28 and the type site of Antelope Creek 22, there's 15 boxes of storage boxes of pottery from Alabates 28 alone. And in going through the boxes that are marked rim sherds where the decorations mostly occur, David Hughes found no lip decorations in examining 192 rim sherds from Alabates Room 28. So these sherds, these pots have very little decorations that occur to it. The ones that occur in the central plains, this upper band, they all have what's called a collared rim with decorations on the very wide lip that's applied. The lower ones are more common. They have the S-shaped collared rims, but there's decorations that you'll see among these artifacts too. The Stamper site was one that was excavated in 1933 and 34. They got more than 20 houses excavated during the time period. And I want to point out that these houses tend to be exceedingly large. Again, double vertical stone slabs, the one on the upper right. has got a very, very large room with burials on the floor surface, and it's superimposed over a lower one. And the lower one has a center channel, as you can see, and it's only partly excavated. The upper one does not have a center channel, but it is exceedingly large. It's almost twice or third times as large. And if you go to the general site map, you start seeing that there are a number of very large houses that occur out there. So this is the center of the Oklahoma Panhandle, and it's a little bit interesting. In the 1930s, the people didn't know what a center channel was. And so when they found the center channel rims, they didn't recognize the bench. They dug the benches out. So these have been interpreted throughout most of the 1930s, both in Texas and in Oklahoma, as the interior walls of subdividing rooms. But that's clearly a factor of excavation. So I've been looking at pottery decorations and tabulating it, and I can validate what David Hughes notes about cord-marked pottery. So far, I've completely analyzed the ceramic assemblages from about 17 Antelope Creek sites, and I have few or virtually no decorations occurring in the Texas Panhandle around the quarries in the Antelope Creek proper area. But the Stamper site, which has characteristics of everything else, has 20 or 30 different decorative motif forms. The lower line, the Center Plains collar rib shirts with decorations and other kinds of forms at the very bottom of the row. Those are classic shirts that are found in Nebraska and areas further north, and they represent trade shirts. But all this other decoration that you see here in the upper parts of these decorations are common. They occur in the Pratt, Wilmore, and Bluff Creek complexes of Kansas too, as well as the Buried City area. So, this is a little bit out of line. I apologize this thing, but this is a comparison of the size of houses for Antelope Creek for my dissertation. I looked at 28 different houses. The residential structures are the ones that are circled by green dots. The two of the rooms from Stamper are marked in red, gives you some idea of the very large. And then the Buried City are the ones that are marked in blue diamonds. And you see they also have exceedingly large houses. So most of the houses in Antelope Creek are the ones to the left, upper residential sides, residential with floor channels and without floor channels, tend to be pretty darn tiny in square meters, from about 11 square meters up to about 30. But extremely large ones, 56 to 68 on the right in Antelope Creek, are exceedingly rare, but they tend to be very common into the Buried City. The site of the temple ruin with 154 square meters is undoubtedly a contiguous room structure like the ones in Antelope Creek, but it was dug in 1907, and they took out a lot of the interior walls. Here's the picture of the Buried City houses. The temple ruin on the right is most likely a contiguous room structure. It's got 3 or 4 center fire pits. Again, you can see the rock rubble walls. This was not backfilled after the 1907 excavation, so that's why it's kind of strange. But this looks like Antelope Creek 22, or maybe a little bit like Elevates 28, multiple families building in one single room block. The Kit Corson house, photograph on the left, is a classic one that shows the entryway coming in from, it's facing east, but you see the center depressed floor channel, center hearth, 4 roof support posts. The vertical walls here are not parallel to the walls, but they're perpendicular. The stones are perpendicular in size. That has yet to be found in Antelope Creek proper. And then it's got one small flanking room attached to one side. So this does show you little differences in architecture. But there's a lot of similarities in the thing. Other than these houses tend to be large, and the ones in Buried City are incredibly large. These are the Buried City pottery. And David said Buried City has only 4% of the potsherds have decorations on it, but that's 231 sherds from his analysis, as opposed to 0% coming from Alabate's ruin. So these are decorations with finger punctate, incised bands of lines, finger gouging, little tick marks along margins, a lot of variability of these decorations that are showing up here. So, and like I said, these do occur in the Pratt and Bluff Creek complexes. So what does all this mean? Why do we have the differences? I guess I need to go back, is that if everyone is getting alabates from one particular source and it occurs in great abundance in the Buried City and the cultures of Kansas, and everyone belongs to the Central Plains tradition, the flints of the quarries are badly fractured, and the flint knapping of alabates is sometimes a challenge to deal with. And so examining the alabates flint, the chipstone material itself, is not very informative. So thing is, because you can't fix mistakes when you do flint knapping as well as easily as you can with pottery. So the pottery is really the key to understanding what is going on. And what I think we're seeing here is a situation where we have Antelope Creek, or the people that are mining the stuff. I'm going to take a little drink here. Excuse me. The flint is being quarried from Antelope Creek, and it's being moved into the Buried City. And the Pratt, Wilmore, and Bluff Creek complexes in the Buried City all have high instances of decorated pottery. But I consider this to be not only a rendezvous site where different groups of people are potentially coming together for trade fairs or festivals or feasting activities, but I think the absence of decorated pottery that get back to the quarries tell me that there's a gateway barrier in here that prohibit or limit the amount of decorated pottery that seeps into the Texas Panhandle area proper. And basically what I think this is, there's a lot of variability of whether we're dealing with direct contact or the hosted group by Buried City people, and we got contact with the Pratt, Wilmore, and Bluff Creek people with Antelope Creek people during festivals, and it may be direct exchange of flint going in that direction. But clearly the pottery just doesn't seem to be welcome at all coming back into the Texas Panhandle. Undoubtedly, people are involved with trade partnerships or with middlemen. And the gateway, again, is a way of controlling access to the entry point of people, materials, and places into the Panhandle. So why did Antelope Creek fall apart? Well, it turns out that the big houses, when Antelope Creek first gets started, during the times of droughts, that is when the contiguous room structures at Alabate's Ruin 28 and Antelope Creek 22 are constructed during this intervals of drought in the red zone. But in the latter half of the culture, by and large, to the very end, you have a dominance of moisture coming in. That means that we have more spring water coming out of the Ogallala Aquifer down into the tributaries. And that's when you get isolated houses scattered across the landscape in greater abundance. So I think there's in part a shift due to the paleoclimatic regimes that are going on until everything falls apart in the big 35-year drought, 37-year drought. So the abandonment of Antelope Creek period 1450, 1475 coincides with the drought, possibly the arrival of Athabascan-speaking groups. This is about the time the Apachean people arrive on the Southern Plains, is 1500. I think the droughts have much more to do. This is the same drought that hits Chaco Canyon in the Southwest and everything else. But basically, what I think I'm seeing is that because the whole culture collapses, the Antelope Creek culture collapses, the people are going somewhere, and yet no other culture that postdates Antelope Creek has a center channel or other architectural traits. So therefore, the question is, I don't see these people necessarily moving en masse from one area to another, with the possible exception of the Pawnee Indians. And what we see is in the northern part of Kansas and Nebraska are the four bands of the Pawnee. The ones that the three of them live very close together near the Missouri River, but the furthest west one were the Skidee Pawnee. And in the 1890s, Grinnell interviewed the people and said, "Tell me about where you came from." And the reply from those people in the 1890s were, "We come from the Southwest where we lived in stone houses." And this one passage has been attributed for a very long time to reflect the movement of trade coming out of the Pueblo area. But the truth of the matter is, the stone houses they're talking about, I believe, to be the Antelope Creek structures. And it's possible we have enough people that are moving north, they still remember, still recall. But the houses that are up there do not have center channels at all. The Pratt, Wilmore, and Bluff Creek complex down in southern Kansas, none of those houses have center channels either, and they have the decorated pottery. And I think what's going on is that people are not moving in mass, but it's individual families that are going in and joining trade partners that happen through several different cultural entities. They're marrying into, they're being overwhelmed with relationships with the indigenous people that are already contemporaneously occupying that area. The other thing is that we have, about the same time as we have the drought occurring, we have the Calumet ceremony occurring throughout North America, mostly plains of eastern United States. But basically, the buried city is located on Wolf Creek, which is, we only have the Wolf Creek and Blanco Canyon as major sweetwater creeks. That is not gyp water coming off the high plains. There are occasional smaller creeks that might have it too, but much of the water flowing out of the panhandle is pretty brackish and not very well suited. And so the buried city location on Wolf Creek is ideal for hosting and feasting, exchanging elevates, food, salt, food, other things. And they have trade partners develop into fictive kin, if you will. So when droughts hit, people are most likely sharing food. And I think the pottery is a way to get into it. The gateway restricts the Kansas consumers from perhaps coming down directly into the elevates quarry source areas. Instead, the buried city is the preferred area for the rendezvous locations. The Calumet ceremony, want to make sure, looking to sneak a peek. Yeah. Okay. The Calumet ceremony was developed in response to the drought and covered many of the cultures throughout the plains area, the Ohio Valley, and even the Southeast. And it involved the distribution and ceremonial smoking of redstone pipes. We see a great occurrence of these in the Middle Ceramic period, but the ceremonies involve dancing, but it also involves exchanges of food stuff. And these are the events that solidify the fictive kin relationships that are occurring from Antelope Creek people into the cultures of southern Kansas. So I threw this picture in here to indicate that the historic movement of Wichita Confederacy bands, the Wichita people of today, the Wichita involves predominantly 4 bands, and this is their movement. But basically, after the collapse of Antelope Creek and the occupation of South Central Kansas, those people tend to move up to the Big Bend of the Arkansas River to the north. But because of the Osage in Missouri, they're moving downriver to the area of the Oklahoma, Kansas areas, Deer Creek, and other sites in that area are where they're meeting and stuff. In other words, they're moving further away from hostile Oto people coming out of Missouri, and they're moving downstream and picking up contacts with the French. So the French around 1720 or so are moving here. Through time, these folks tend to move further south. Again, due to increased pressure, they tend to move from the Arkansas River down to the longest site, which was the site that was attacked following the burning of San Saba by the Spanish and the battles that occurred there. And then through time, the other groups, the Toyovayas, the Tawakani, the Kichai, the Waco proper, the Ishkani, all move essentially in the same direction. And through time, they made it into Waco area, and then were pushed back north into the current location in Kansas. A lot of this is happening due to the violence that was occurring under President Lamar, to exterminate hostile Indians in the area. It just wasn't safe for them, so they moved back north to Indian territory. So that's my ideas about doing this sort of stuff. There has been limited studies of petrographic analysis of pottery and some paste characteristics, but the 2 major studies that have been conducted usually involve less than 150 sherds from maybe 7 or 8 or a dozen sites, and we just don't have enough diversity. My tactic is to map out the area of decorations first, and then pick out sherds with the same decorations, and then do the instrumental neutron activation studies and petrography of material. A lot of people would also argue that temper needs to be considered, but most everything occurring in this area are grit tempered, sand tempered pottery, and it really reflects local occurring. So Elevate's flint activities were controlled by Antelope Creek people during the middle period. The people may have had logistic support supporting the extraction labor. Clearly, if you got people digging 729 quarry pits, you probably have got people hunting and feeding the laborers while they're digging these quarry pits. And so we got a lot of support. Long-term occupation of Elevate's Room 28 is a clear indication. Exchange was not directed towards Pueblo people as often as it was to people of southern Kansas. Details of the interaction are being delineated by the decorations of cord-marked pottery coupled later on by temper and clay studies. Exchange may have been among trade partners or calumet ceremonies that provided exchange and economic support during food shortages caused by the drought, particularly during the latter drought. And droughts and perhaps intrusion of Athabascans might have led to the demise of the Texas Panhandle people of Antelope Creek. Antelope people probably did not abandon their homestead region in mass, but maybe moved on a family by family basis, like during the great drought of the Panhandle in the 1930s. A family by family movement in with trade partners. So instead, individual families might have been absorbed by trade partners associated with several diverse cultures in Kansas and Nebraska. And because they were absorbed by other people, they abandoned things like the center channels and other architectural designs that made Antelope Creek such a distinctive culture that we've been studying. think that's about it. Any questions?
Wow.
Thank you,
Chris,
Chris.
that was great. I mean, there was an awful lot of information there. I think we're going to have to look at this presentation again and again and again to make sure we absorb all the information. There's a lot of questions if you look in the chat.
Yeah, I've got I was going to say I'll read them out to Chris here
Do you
real
want to go
quick.
through them, Frank? You've probably got them all.
Jimmy Barrera gives his apologies. He had to leave for a phone call from family, but he had the first question here. Hi, Chris. Do you know if anyone has sampled for pathogens or DNA using the grimy soil and the entry troughs on these sites? Just curious if that analysis has occurred and potential results from the Antelope Creek area.
Well, I interpret him to ask about the filth in the center channel area.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in terms of DNA, the answer is no. And
Okay.
matter of fact, in terms of comparative studies, all the human remains have been repatriated to the Wichita. For a while there, we had about a 4-year window of opportunity to try to get Kansas people involved in DNA studies, and that did not happen. So we do not have a lot of indigenous skeletal or indigenous people to compare that to. Sorry, it just happened.
Okay. Let's see. Do you have this is from Betsy Wittenmeyer. Do you have an opinion about the corded pottery, decorative exterior only, or the textured surface provided better grip, or the cord was in place on the exterior while in use?
There's a lot of ideas about the cord marking, and maybe it is the better grip. That's certainly a very feasible idea about it. But there's also the concept that by doing the impressions on the outside, what you're actually doing is expanding the surface area of the vessel. So when you're doing cooking, it heats up faster than it would if you just had a smooth surface vessel on it. The fact that it's so widespread all the way up to Canada and the New York state area and into Siberia tells me it's a very functional attribute that has served its purpose very well for several thousand years. It starts off in I forgot the dates, but up in New York, I believe it's almost 1,000 years earlier than it is in my area.
Okay. Bob, you want to just go ahead and ask your question on the TAS Field School up in Palo Duro?
Yeah, okay. During the 2019 TAS Field School in Palo Duro Canyon, a potential house structure was found. I actually assisted in excavating it. It was 18 inches deep, rocks surrounding it, vestibule facing east, or we think it was. Are you aware of any update on what that was? Was it really a pit house or whatever they're called?
To my knowledge, there's not been a lot of progress in terms of the report productions have happened. Okay. But I think if you're talking about the site number 3, I think was the RD3 was the site number. Okay. One of those areas that had rock alignments turned out to be border lines along WPA constructed trails. And that's the same site that also produced 4 or 5 plain brownware Southwest potsherds on it. So there's sort of a mixture of all kinds of stuff going on there. Now, if it was the Emerson Pearson site, which was on the backside of the Capitol Dome, that's another whole kettle of fish. And that's an exciting report or one of the most exciting sites I've ever seen. It's not Antelope Creek to my knowledge. It didn't see a whole lot of appearance there, but that has some tremendous opportunities to help unravel what's going on in the Panhandle. I want to
Okay.
mention one other thing before I leave this topic. In 1996, I believe it was, the TAS Field School dug the Harrison Greenbelt site up in Donnelly County near Clarendon, for those of you that have been around that long. And that particular site was directed by Paul and Susanna Cates, under primarily Susanna, and she unfortunately died of cancer shortly after the field school's over. That site has finally been published this year, or has been completed. There's a master's thesis by a guy named Brandon Tully, who earned his master's degree from Texas Tech University on the Harrison Greenbelt site. His thesis is 333 pages long. It's an amazing document, and it describes a whole bunch of pit houses that are found in Donnelly County. And what we're beginning to see is that Antelope Creek is connected to the southwest along the Canadian River, and goes into Pecos, Pueblo, and Galisteo Basin and places like that. But it could well be that the Lake Creek complex of woodland time period, which we thought was just ended before middle ceramic period, might have perpetuated into the 13 and 1400s, which are the dates for the Harrison Greenbelt site. There's some 15 dates available from that location. And it's the most remarkable thing. That, with the paper that was just published by Brett Cruz in one of the last bulletins, clearly show that we have a high incidence of plain brownware pottery and cord mark pottery at these locations. And it may well be that we have got a Mogollon continuity into the Red River sites, separate and distinct from the Canadian River sites. That is almost exclusively cord marked pottery. So that's more things to chew on.
Yeah.
More questions. Okay, here's another one from Betsy. How easy is it to visit the Alabates quarries? I recall some restrictions when I looked into it and wondered if you or anyone have any tips on sites in that area that are interesting to visit. I also recall that being a remote and rather isolated area to visit.
Okay, yeah, the Alabates National Monument, when I started, there was just nothing out there. They now have a permanent building with a museum, and they have a garden, indigenous garden present. It's located about a mile from the trailhead that you got to climb up to the top of the ridge to get to the quarry pits. They prefer to have guided tours, they being the National Park Service who manages the property. I don't know under the present presidential regime whether the Park Service is in trouble and has cut back on those things or not. But one thing I do want to point out is that Alabates Ruin 28, the one I've featured so prominently in this thing, is on private land that borders the National Park Service land. And during Archaeological Awareness Month, October, for one weekend, the National Park Service guides something like 20 vehicles in, and you walk in and you can actually get into that archaeological site with cooperation landlord. But that 1 or 2 weekends are the only time you can get in to see Alabates Ruin 28. That's open. There's rock art out there that's kind of fun to see. They'll show you too, on top of everything else. So the horrible situation about Antelope Creek was that back in the 1960s, I think it was, there was an attempt to expand Texas Parks and Wildlife from 30 parks to 95 parks. And during that process, they wanted to have one park dedicated to major Indian cultures of each era. And so that's why we have Caddo Mound State Park. We've got the one in El Paso. Antelope Creek fell apart. There's no public park that features an Antelope Creek site that you can go visit. It's all on private land right now. Landrigan Mesa was supposed to be that park, and it fell apart politically before it was consummated. So I can't direct you to visit archaeological sites that really show these areas in great detail. One other possibility might be that Harold Corson is an oil man that owns a huge chunk of the Panhandle, and he has hired Scott Bersowski almost 20 years ago now to be his professional archaeologist, and they're up in Perriton. But if you were to contact Scott Bersowski, it might be possible that you can twist an arm and go see that. I should mention also that the Buried City is a county park, but getting to the actual quarry pits, the Buried City site on Wolf Creek largely features the lake and not the archaeological stuff, even though there's some spectacular things to see in there. Mostly
Did they rebury Buried City after they dug it up to protect it, or is it exposed?
I think it's exposed.
Okay.
The houses that David Hughes dug for the TAS Field School, if you recall, were on the rims of 40 foot tall alluvial cliffs. And it was extremely hard to backfill any of that sort of stuff. The thing is that there's about 30 or 40 houses in that general area. And those houses stretch downstream for about 5 miles before they peter out a little bit. So there's lots of things to see in that area. Very
I'm sorry. To move on, Jimmy Barrera had another question here. Regarding all periods of human occupation at Alabates, are there any studies showing peaks in quarrying periods at Alabates correlating with certain climatic episodes like wetter periods? Or was the quarrying at Alabates generally consistent in terms of use throughout the Archaic to Antelope Creek phase?
Questions. What I can tell you, in terms of paleo-environment stuff, I'm not sure I can answer that question, but I can certainly answer. Antelope Creek is the only culture that had resident populations to support the quarrying activities. You have to have resident labor and everything else. Now, when I got on Plum Creek on the north side, the private land on the north side, there's 2 other types of quarries that are different than what the Alabates National Monument shows. Alabates National Monument is largely circular pits that occur that are dug down from above and exposed. When you go over to the Plum Creek area, at the edge of the mesa tops, the bluff edges, you'll have an outcrop of pure Alabates, 100% Alabates material. Like I said, sometimes huge boulders. And what you'll see is that people are digging slit trenches from that boulder into the cut bank. And there's one spot I didn't use it in a picture here, but I've got one that has, you can see from vegetation differences, the slit trenches have different plants growing in them than everywhere else. And you can see 7 quarry slit trenches being dug back from individual boulders along that cliff face. That's different. The other thing is that the National Monument quarry pits have got very little flint in it, where if you go to Plum Creek, 1 or 2 of those sites, every one of those pits has got double fist-sized boulders completely filling the pits. And they're all bifacially flaked. It's all shaped material that's abandoned and left there. It's just real dense material. Now, there's no doubt in my mind, every bit of that is done by Antelope Creek people due to the logistical support of doing those. One other quarry that I found on Plum Creek was a boulder that was highly fractured due to the anticlines and syncline folding of the beds out there. And this one boulder, which was about waist high, was extremely badly fractured and with parallel fractures. And what you could do is you could take another flake and wiggle these pieces out, and you could get single flakes of naturally fractured stone about as big as the palm of your hand with your fingers extended. just by working them free. And people had done that so much that there was actually a hole all the way through the boulder. They had removed that much flint, people just plucking. No doubt in my mind that does not involve picks and shovels to deal. And I suspect the 12,000, 15,000 years of people using alabates, any of those people could have been using that. So I think we've got that kind of activity going where you have badly fractured boulders where you can get usable material coming out of readily. No idea about climatic conditions.
Okay. Betsy also asked, you may have covered this, but how far away have you found evidence of alabates trade originating from the site?
(1968) is when the National Monument was created, and Floyd Studer and other folks put out some publications that talked about this thing, and they passed them out to every congressman in Washington to promote it. And they swear that they've got alabates flint occurring as far west as California and as far north as Wyoming or Montana. I think there's a mistake about anything that's multicolor or banded is called alabates in the 1930s or 60s when they were putting this together. The other thing is I can tell you that more than likely the material that occurs in Wyoming that is alabates is probably genuine alabates, but most likely it is Paleo-Indian. The Paleo-Indian points are sometimes made. So you get long distance trade during Paleo-Indian Clovis and Folsom times where people are coming great distances together and exchanging materials. Now, when I talk about Antelope Creek stuff, I think I can probably talk about 400 or 500 miles would be as far as you go. I have to mention, I think there's an article in La Tierra indicating there's alabates flint from San Antonio. That was reported by Jimmy Mitchell. So okay. I think it's down there.
Gary Hartman, your question, I wasn't quite sure what you were asking here. That's why I'm going to have it. You said, did the certification happen as a result of a catastrophic event or general time passing? Is that what you wanted to ask, or something else?
Yeah, the certification of the material.
Certification.
Right. Did that happen as a result of catastrophic events, or was it over a period of time with the natural goings on of the earth?
My interpretation, it was ongoing occurrence going on, and it turned. I didn't include a lot of that stuff because I already had 35 pictures. I didn't want to overwhelm you with all these other images. But the bottom line is that I strongly believe that, like I said, we have dolomite, which is very much like limestone, and throughout the Panhandle. That the alabates formation is largely dolomite, and like I said, you get these bead areas that are as big as the end of a pencil, if you will. Get those things scattered around. There'll be chert nodules occurring there. In a dolomite rock, you'll see these little specks of chert showing up there. And so I think what's really going on here is that silica is being dissolved by groundwater. And I suspect that during the Ogallala Formation, when we have the Ogallala water beds in the upper deposits, it is dissolving silica and then it's percolating down through the lower deposits. And those that stop in the Tecovas beds become Tecovas flint, and those that go on down to Permian become alabates. But I think it's the silica is trickling down through the material. The flint, Tecovas, alabates, all that stuff has in excess of 95% pure silica, and the colors are extremely minute trace element analysis. While I'm on the color traces, I thought at one time it would be possible to go back and do alabates ruin 28, the WPA excavation with the 50 houses that they excavated. you could go around there and you could look at the colors of flint around each house, and then go to the quarry sites and put down a 1 meter grid over the top of it, characterize the color patterns around quarries, around each of the different knolls and so forth. Boy, going back and looking at stuff, you soon realize that no, the patterns are not that consistent. The same color patterns occur on virtually all the ridges around the National Monument Core, the 729 elevates quarries. So that's not a feasible way of approaching that question.
Gary, since we got you up there, go ahead and unmute yourself and I'll let you ask your question about the pipes also.
I had before you even talked about them, you had a picture of some catlinite pipes, you know, the red pipes. I think they're
Yes.
catlinite. Did you find any in your excavations?
There's a fair amount of
Or materials for the pipes?
I can tell you from survey work that the Permian deposits that occur in eastern New Mexico, throughout the Panhandle, and even western Oklahoma, is an orange red stuff, and we get a lot of pipes that are broken during manufacture in all three of those areas.
Oh, okay.
So there's that stuff, but the catlinite pipes tend to be a blood red, little deeper color. There was a guy named Jim Gunderson, not Gunderson, the archaeologist, but Gunderson, the chemist during the 1970s and 80s from Kansas, that identified the mimics of the catlinite pipe up north. And right now, I'm not entirely certain whether this stuff's coming down from Minnesota or if it's coming out of Kansas. But the dark blood red types that are so distinctive, I think any dark red would have worked fine for the Calumet ceremonies.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, and finally from Betsy, what are your thoughts and theories as to why the Stamper site structures were unusually large?
Another drink. I've got to think about this.
May need a bit more water.
Or
Yeah.
beer.
No. This is not beer. I wish. That starts in 5 minutes. Okay, Stamper site was, like I said, it was dug in 1933 and 34. And there was the records have been terrible. I've published 4 separate articles in a serial thing out of the Oklahoma Bulletin of Oklahoma Archaeology that describe all 20 houses and documents the burials and everything else that's coming out of that area. My feeling is that what we have, the traditional wisdom when I started archaeology in the Panhandle, was that Antelope Creek was as far west as you're going to get. There was nothing further south. There's nothing, similar further to the north or anything like that. It was all unique and different. Now what I'm seeing is, like, I published a report a couple of years back, maybe many years ago, on the Conley Peak site in the Oklahoma Bulletin. And that site deals with the pottery and the decoration on the pottery, cord-marked pottery, all of it, highly decorated cord-marked pottery. And there's a lot of elevates that shows up in that location. Then you get to the buried city, which is a little further east, a little bit north, and then further west in the Oklahoma Panhandle and further north, there's another one. All 3 of these areas is sort of a buffer zone forming a sea around the eastern half of Antelope Creek core area, if you will. And I think these represent perhaps large, just like with Buried City, I think the Stamper site could be a rendezvous site with 20 houses present.
Okay.
Okay.
One more. Could you please revisit the theories on why there were floor channels, how they might have been used? And it sounds like these features were culturally and temporally unique.
The second part of your question is absolutely true. Culturally unique, with minor exceptions. Like I said, it's not just Antelope Creek, but Buried City, and the one in Northwest Oklahoma is called the Zims Complex. It's got post walls, but it does have the center channels, just like the Jack Allen site that I showed you. So we have, and I didn't show you the map showing architectural pattern differences. I could have included that to bring that point home. But basically, it's these folks on the Southern Plains. It does not occur in Colorado at all. It doesn't, to my knowledge, I've not seen any of these sites with center channels that have been excavated in northeast New Mexico. So it's the Texas Panhandle of western Oklahoma that has these things. And what it is first, the winds are very, very stout out there. So I think the houses pretty much, I'm getting myself in trouble here. Over the years, archaeologists have proposed something like 12 different shapes of Antelope Creek houses. The Jack Allen site, no doubt with picket post walls, with a 15-degree slope of the posts, had adobe walls, plastered on the outside of the posts. Most other Antelope Creek sites have vertical stone slabs, puddled adobe with occasional horizontal rows, more adobe above, make these walls 6 or 7 feet tall all the way to the top. And I think the roofs on top might be thatched. We do have the Jack Allen site has a completely restored smoke hole, completely circular for the very crown of everything above the 4 center posts has been refitted at one point. So we got some really neat information on those kinds of things. But getting back to the floor channels again define the sleeping areas on the north and south sides on the bench, what's called the benches. I use that term from earlier people, poor choice. These are low areas, probably covered in buffalo robes, but for sleeping and other kinds of processing. The center part of the area between the 4 center posts go down another couple inches, maybe as much as a foot deep, maybe a little deeper than that. And what that does is really confine and constrict the ash from the center fire hearth where you're doing your cooking. All the preparation of your food and processing of anything you want to do. You're probably sitting on the edge of your bench working into the lower thing, and then you can come through and periodically sweep out that center channel. Throw it out over the entryway, because there's an entry step, if you recall that picture of the Jack Allen site, and get it out of the house and keep your house a lot cleaner than if you didn't have it. So I think it's a pretty remarkable invention. A little bit more work involved in building it, and I don't know why other people didn't follow through, but it is pretty special and unique to the Southern High Plains.
Was there any evidence of a summer house where they would sleep outside instead of sleeping inside during the hottest months of the year?
That's an excellent question. If you go back to the Alabates, when you review the program and look at the pictures of Alabates Ruin 28, you're going to see that there are some small circular buildings nearby the larger ones. And so the answer is, maybe that's what those are.
Maybe, yeah. Okay.
I can tell you that the very first small circular structures with vertical stone slabs was excavated by Lathel Duffield, published in the TAS Bulletin around 1964. And he thinks from his excavations, he dug a trench. He dug out the interior of the house and a trench across the mid near it. And he ended up finding 4 potsherds and maybe 3 or 4 flakes. And he declared these to be field huts. That were visited to 10 fields away from your village. I haven't published the Roper site, but I've studied the Roper site in great detail. I've got a 230-page manuscript on it, incomplete. I've got almost 500 potsherds from the Roper site. There were 4 circular structures, no rectangular structures there. So it's more than just a field hut. There are also pipes and jewelry present at that site. So it tells me I don't think Duffield's right about that.
Okay,
One more question, we'll get you out of here.
it's the last
This
one.
Buried City site, is that in Oklahoma?
The state park located at the Buried
Yeah.
City site.
You know, the answer, the short answer is yes, probably. The Wolf Creek has high concentrations of these sites over a 5-mile stretch,
Okay.
where the Ogallala Aquifer comes out and goes down Wolf Creek towards Oklahoma. There are surveys done by the Oklahoma Archaeological Survey in Ellis County, and they have some sites down there, none excavated, but the pottery looks similar to this stuff. So it could be that we've got something going on in Ellis County that might have ties to the Buried City. And of course, the Zim complex is up in that part of the country too. So the picket post walls with the center channels are in that area. So they haven't done very much digging in Oklahoma on these houses.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I think we're just about out of time. I mean, it's been a longer meeting than we normally would have. We had lots of questions, which I'm not surprised at, because it's been a wonderful presentation with lots of information, Chris. I hope we can see you again at sometime soon. I'd just like now to wish everyone a very pleasant evening. Thank you.
all very much.
Adios.
You're
Goodbye.
welcome.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Chris.
Thanks,
Glad we got
Chris.
this
Thank
off
you,
here.
Chris.
Appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
And good luck with your house renovation too.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I need to put in a center channel down the middle of my floor.
All right. Take care, Chris.
I think we're done.
We'll be in touch with you here soon. Okay.
Goodbye,
Thanks.
everybody.
Look forward.
Thank you.
Take care. Good
Take
night.
care, buddy. All right. I'm going to kill it, Bob. Let me turn this off here real quick.
Good.